Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Get Jashed. And it's the first interview episode in quite a while, and I'm really glad to be starting the year off this way as well, because with me I have the great Al Mitchell. Al is the program coordinator for the LIVIN Well program with our favorite mental health charity, LIVIN. And he's been gracious enough to join me here today to have a chat just about all things well-being and leadership and Al. So thanks so much for joining
Oh,
me.
that's a lovely introduction. Thanks, Jess. I
Well,
love it. Really good.
Aussies.
Yeah.
I wanted to, and like it's been months since I've been following up on, followed up, and that was on me, about having this conversation
Mm.
because so with LIVIN, well, I might actually get you to share more about LIVIN just for the context of, but
Yes.
with Al's role in LIVIN, he speaks to a lot of people. He speaks in front of a lot of people, to large groups of workplaces and schools, and many times over many years. So he always has a good story to tell and great perspective to share, which is a lot of the reason why I wanted to get you on here, because I know that you've had quite a journey in life and it's always useful to kind of share our stories, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah. Look, living, I suppose, with the charity started in 2013, and with everybody that works there, we've all got a lived experience with mental health or mental ill health or mental good health, and I think it's just a great little community that have a single purpose, and that's breaking stigma, making sure that people accept that it ain't weak to speak, and that we continue to deliver a message in a meaningful and relatable way. That I suppose people can see through someone who's fake or see through someone who's just tokenistic, whereas we're there, because we've been through from, the depths of some of us have been through right down at the very bottom. And, we want to share our story, so we empower people to have a voice and share. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great mission. And if you haven't heard of LIVIN, I'll share the link and everything like that, because I highly recommend it. But in general, and I can attest to that too, it is a great crew of people to be around and to be involved with. So for anyone listening as well, I'm also a facilitator with LIVIN. I'm very lucky to be involved in that way.
And a great one too, by the way.
But what I noticed for the facilitated training that I undertook last year in 2022 now, is that sitting in the room with people, and I'm sort of one that likes to sit back and just observe people, not judge them necessarily, but just to kind of get a feel for what people are about and what they're like and everything like that. And normally with groups of people who are there for something, they kind of have the same mission, but you can kind of expect some differing views, not necessarily clashes, but differing sort of alignments that are there but not quite exactly clicking in. And one thing I remember standing out to me, this is feedback for you, by the way, just so you know.
Thank you.
One thing I remember standing out for me in those 2 days is I had a sense of gratitude, because it was one of the clearest times that I can recall being in a group of people who are literally from all different walks of life. We had professional athletes in that group. We had people with all sorts of different backgrounds, of vocations, of everything. But there was this is going to be almost cliche, cringy when I'm going to do it anyway, but not the only, but all of these different backgrounds, but all one heart.
Yeah, a definite alignment, right?
Yeah, and I remember sitting there just feeling gratitude, because there wasn't sort of that weird sense of friction, like I said, that sometimes I've felt in other groups just from observing, where I'm like, oh yeah, okay, there's a little bit of management here. This was just everyone is just here for the same thing and the same values, and everyone's willing to learn. And I think that was relief for me as well, just around mental health, because so much of mental health education, quote unquote education, for people comes from places like Instagram, and some of it's really useful, but some of it is sometimes just sort of takes off without any basis or merit to it. And what you guys shared and talked about and covered was so real and trustworthy. Like, you know, there was the science base of it, there was the research behind it, there was everything. It was very trauma as well, and that's all, you know, they're all values for me personally in work. So it was a relief in that way, but everyone just had the same heart of not wanting to cause more damage, wanting to help.
I love the fact that we've come to that point, because it has taken a number of years for us to really, I suppose, iron out the kinks, but to get this seamless process. And it's all about our, you know, the way that we not only deliver our sessions and we get connection with everybody and make it meaningful, and again, not tokenistic, but the, you know, even the application process where we ask, and you had to do this, you know, you have to present a video, a resume, all those type of things. And, you know, people say, oh, geez, you make them do an application video. It's like, yeah, just a short little 2-minute snippet, but I want the real you. Yeah. I want the authentic Jess to come through. And I always, you know, when people email me or call me and say, hey, what should I say? I'll go, say whatever you want, but mean it, and don't redo it and don't edit it. Just, I want the raw, unashamedly you. I want you up front, so I know the exact person I'm going to be dealing with. And it quickly lines out the people who are there just ticking a box and those who are there for really strong, valid reasons. And yeah, I think that's why the connection is so great.
I did think of that, because I knew that, and it wasn't a hard process either. It was like, oh, this is easy. I can literally do this on my phone. And I liked that because it was accessible in that way. But it was good because after being in the room for 2 days with everyone, it was also this feeling of, yeah, they really vetted it in a way, because they've checked in on, it's not just, you know, going, oh, anyone who wants to tick a box, like, you know, let's do this. No, this is a very important mission of spreading the importance of education. It's education around mental health and mental ill health, and how we can help people without necessarily having to be therapists ourselves or having to fix things, quote unquote, fix things for those just listening to this. But it's also this, like, it's so important for that to come from a genuine place. Not to say other people either, but it's, you know, it's the values alignment. And
absolutely. And I think that stems from, you know, particularly from the way that, you know, if we looked at LIVIN as an entity, everyone in HQ, for the sake of lack of a better word, all have connection, all are there for the same feeling and the same meaning. And, you know, we've got a really strong team of connected people that, you know, we don't work in little silos. We all work together. We all have to cross over and work. And so if we're not part of that and we don't align, then it just doesn't work. So, well, it may work, but it'd be a lot harder. So, you know, I'm really appreciative of how we've gone about it and how we've adapted and changed, and we had to, because, you know, the world's becoming a lot busier. It's becoming the you know, the area that we're in is jam-packed full of other people that do the same stuff, and we've got to have a point of difference. So, you know, and that's because we just real life relatable facilitators. We don't need to have well, we do have some psychologists and some professionals in areas, but we don't need to have that necessarily. I can have someone just off the street that's, you know, gone through some really tough battles, but is a fantastic speaker, can engage really well. And that's so much more valuable to me than a person who's got a whole heap of doctorates and everything like that saying, I'm super qualified. It's like, yeah, man, you could be, but you might not connect with the people you've got to connect with.
Exactly. And you know me, like, I'm always going on about emotional intelligence and communication. With people, like, yes, educate yourself if that's what you're interested in, but it's also like, bring it back to that connection point too. As part of, you know, the LIVIN sessions and the LIVIN Well sessions, like, it, you know, these sessions ask us to share at moments like our own experience for the audience to sort of become relatable. And I know that each of you guys who are training us and from the team, you know, like at the beginning of our training days, you get up and you share your story too. And all of that requires a little bit of vulnerability, which I think some people can kind of, you know, feel or struggle with in some way, like, you know, whether it, which is, I guess, the whole message as well, like it ain't me to speak, or like breaking the stigma, but even in the sense of not knowing how much vulnerability is too much or too little, or how to find the balance. But I think that you do it really well.
Thank you.
Do you, like, is that something that you've had to get used to, like, or over time or over your life, or are there moments in your life, like you can share a little bit more about?
Yeah, sure.
Too, like,
yeah, look, I think it's a growth thing that's happened to me, and unconsciously not even realizing that I have this unique connection or this unique ability to connect. So ever since I was a young fella growing up in a small country town, very, very well-known family, you know, we've like I said previously, and to other people, I think it was 2 months ago, my family celebrated their 200th anniversary of being in Australia.
wow.
So we were, our farmhouse was built in 1842. And, you know, my great-great-great-grandfather served, and he surveyed Port Phillip for Captain Arthur Phillip. So all that type of stuff, there's some real deep history. And for us, when we go down that path, particularly in a small country town, you become, you can either embrace it and own it, or you can sit there and try and shun it away. And if you do try to shun it, it's then, oh, that guy's, he's a snob, he doesn't want to engage with anybody. Whereas, you know, I'm pretty much an open book, but I didn't realize that. So I suppose it's been a combination of, you know, growing up on a farm, working a lot in hospitality with my uncle and auntie in their hotel, and then going from there, and particularly with sport, you know, it was such a great platform for me to learn about myself and to become, you know, as a young rising footballer playing around older men, to have a voice and to be heard and to feel valued. So that part of it for me, as I went through my career and work, you know, I've had so many diverse jobs. It's quite funny. People say, man, how many jobs have you actually had? You know, I'd get flown home I'd come to Queensland every summer and work on the cruise boats, and then I'd get flown home to play football. And, you know, at one point I was delivering gas bottles for a mate for his family business. So again, I'm connecting with people. I'm going to their house, putting in the gas bottle. When I moved here, I was, you know, working in hospitality. We had hotels, and then I went from that into real estate, again, connecting with people. Then went and worked in a bit of construction for a while as an operations manager, just because of I have a very organized life and I like to be well organized. Everything is neat and in its place. And so, you know, I worked really well in that operational role. And then I went back into hospitality again with my family, doing caravan parks. So everywhere I went, it was all about people. And I think the strongest part that I can ever say for anyone, if you're going to work with people, you've got to be able to listen, but they've also got to feel safe to be able to come to you and talk to you. So yeah, I've made mistakes along the way where I've said the wrong thing, or I've been too strong in my values or too strong in my opinion about what needs to be done. And I think it wasn't until, you know, I became very, very vulnerable and went through the depths of, you know, like I say, you know, being a suicide survivor and all those type of stuff that was really, really traumatic, have made me a different person. Yes, I have moments where my bipolar kicks in and I get a bit crazy and lose my stuff. But one of my great friends, and you know Luke very well, our psychologist at LIVIN, he even says to me, it's amazing to see that now, how I can really quickly self-regulate, particularly in a workspace. If things are starting to get overwhelming, it's a matter of, right, I'm just going to disengage from the computer. I'm going to go outside. I'm going to come back in, and I'm going to have another fresh set of eyes on this and make an assessment. But yeah, I always, whenever it was in a management position or whatever it was, I never asked anyone to do anything I wouldn't do. I never asked anyone to do something that was, you know, didn't align with what their values were. And I employed people based on them. You know, you can have a rap sheet full of all these great qualifications and great work experience and stuff, but I want to know about the real Jess.
Yeah.
And when they come in for an interview, it's like, okay, so what do you do outside of work?
Oh, yeah.
What, do you like to act? What's your fun activities? You know, what do you do for exercise? What do you do for fun? What's your favorite hobby? And they kind of look at you like, what? But I think if someone's active and they've got great hobbies and they've got great lifestyle, and that to me then goes, well, this person is going to fit into our culture really well.
Yeah.
And they're teachable and
Yeah.
they're trainable. And if they're teachable and trainable, then I can make them into anything they can be.
Yeah. And anything they want to be too.
Yeah.
And it's such a difference. I love that you bring that up. And I think it's also like conditioned into people sometimes, because I can remember, I couldn't tell you how, it was a while ago, like years ago, but I can remember moments in my own life where if someone asked me like, what do you do for fun? I couldn't answer because like I was still figuring things out for myself as well. But there's also this conditioning of whether it's outright or sort of unconscious or subconscious, is that like if you're doing a role for work, for example, that is all that you should care about, and then when you go home, all you need to do is just, you know, like eat and prepare or maybe watch TV, which, you know, no problem with that, but that's all just to be ready for work the next day.
Yeah.
And I don't know where I felt that come from at some point in my like younger years, you know, but I remember having a battle with that internally for myself, and then having to really work on that for myself to where now I'm like, much like you, multi-passionate, I call it. I'm actually working on a post right now that's about how to handle things if you're just multi-passionate and you like to do different things all the time, and it's like but channeled into the one sort of mission. And now it's like, oh, and now I understand what I actually enjoy, because you kind of step out of where you're at, out of like a little bubble that you've maybe put yourself in, or you feel like someone else has put you in, to actually enjoy different parts of life. And that does make you a bit more well balanced too, right? I feel
absolutely.
Like it makes you a more like, even I talk about this a lot, like with leaders too, where it's even with employees or with your team, it makes people better contributors.
Yeah. If they feel heard and valued and all that type of stuff, they're going to be part of that team. And it's interesting that we're conditioned, like you say, that the boss has the title, the leader has the people, and you know, we if you call them employees, I'm a big believer in no, we're a team. We're here on the same purpose. We've got a purpose to follow. We've got a set of values that we work by, and there's this, you know, obviously there's procedures in place for us to complete each task. But if we all do it together, and we're all aligned on the same end result, and we just focus on the here and now, what's got to be done here, the result takes care of itself. And for me, it always aligns with sport. That it's the same thing. You know, you train, review, perform, review, train, review, perform, review. So if you keep doing that enough, the result, the performance just takes care of itself. It becomes second nature. You don't have to retrain. And the reviews are easy because then you're taking it on board, saying, okay, I can adjust there. And the results happen. Yeah.
What do you feel like you learned about yourself the most from playing sports?
You don't have to solve things with your fists. Look, as a young man, playing against grown men, it was very, very hard. And I thought that I had to be this alpha male to survive in that world, to be able to prove myself. Where if I'd have gone out there and just done the work and completed the tasks and done the things without that, and a lot of it would stem from my bipolar and my anxiety and depression, and all those things jumble up when you're a sportsman. It's very hard to contain your emotions. But if I'd have played the game in a different way, I probably would have taken a different path. But equally, it taught me so much. You know, there's always a bigger shark in the ocean that's going to come along and get you one day. And I got a couple of times. But you know, I love the whole process. I went from, and I think I walked away from football. And obviously for everyone out there, I'm a mad AFL fan. And when I walked away from it, a piece of me was lost. So going back to that now, and my beautiful wife Dee, when I said to her a few years ago, I'm going to go back, and I was on the football department and the board at our local football club. And I said, I want to go back coaching again. And it just fills my cup. Every Tuesday, Thursday and Saturday, I'm there with the young 19-year-old men, teaching them the ways of life. And, you know, for me, and I've quoted this so many times, I work on the daytime you to get the best game time you. And if I can make little Johnny outside of sport a fantastic human and a fantastic citizen and help him guide to being the best version of himself, the football takes care of itself.
Yeah.
And it fills your cup so much. I love it.
Yeah, well, you've got to find the things that fulfill you too. And there's a lot to be said about like the somatic sort of relief that comes from moving your body as well, and sports allows that, like expression there too. So you work with 19-year-olds or under 19s?
So yeah, under 19s at the moment. I'm part of the full coaching staff at the club. So we're the Surfers Paradise Demons. We're in the State League of AFL up here in Queensland. So it's a fairly high performance environment. Outside of that, I'm also do some wellbeing coaching. So I'm a certified elite athlete wellbeing manager, and I have a couple of young ladies who I coach or help that are in the AFLW in the system. Nice. Which is fantastic, and that's so fulfilling because one of them, she recently had some great accolades for her performance. A few years ago, she was struggling to make the team, and lo and behold, you know, she's become an All-Australian. She's become a Defender of the Year. She's won a premiership. All this stuff that she thought she could never achieve, and it was purely by giving her some tools to be able to get her day life right, so that her football life could just take care of itself and put a different view or a different lens. And all of a sudden, she's a superstar, this kid. It's so fulfilling when you see that.
Yeah, and of course it is. I just find it interesting also because, well, not interesting, but also the of course of it all, because it's you working with sports people and, like, you know, especially of that age or age-ish, that is also one of the highest like levels of mental health issues, right?
Yeah,
I find the right wording for that, but you know what I'm saying, like
their brain is still trying to compute what they're going through hormonally. Life outside of football is just a juggernaut that's going 100 miles an hour for them. And I suppose that place has to be their sanctuary. They've got to feel safe there. And we want to make sure that, you know, they have fun. And, you know, I've got young lads that right now that have just finished high school, they're going to uni and they're like, I don't know what to do. I'm not sure if I can make football anymore. I said, mate, that's totally okay. Just put you first, right? Go and go to uni, go and do your thing. We will happily just help you get there. You know, we're not going to stop you from doing that.
Yeah.
And I think once they know that, and they've got a coach that is there for them, as not only as a friend, as a mentor, as a, you know, some of them even call me second dad, because that's just what I do. I love it. Yeah.
It's like, it's sort of, it reminds me of like the whole village thing too, is like the what we have around us that, you know, whether we call them like family or not, or whatever it is, but the more people we have to go to or to turn to or to just learn from, whether or not we actively lean on them, but to learn from people, I feel like the better off we are, which comes back to, you know, the sharing of your story and putting ourselves out there enough to help guide people too, because you mentioned also how you felt when you quit football. I watched that I've watched that for years, like with awareness of, you know, all the news stories about athletes or retired athletes who do silly things, or even active who are so under pressure that, you know, like that things blow up or things happen. And the immediate thought of that is how it's like, what's happening for them that puts them in that feeling and that pressure, and, you know, versus the nurturing and the sanctuary and everything like that. And I think it is really a lot of it around us as well.
That part of it, and it goes with any type of work, whether it's sport or whether it's construction, whether it's admin, whatever you do, you become attached to that, it becomes part of you. And if, you know, the things outside of you, once you lose that, it can be really hard to change what you've known for so long. You know, these young sports stars or young sports people who are going through the you know, the different academies, and it's men and women, particularly for young ladies now, particularly, like they're coming through a system that's brand new, that's just developed for them. And they're so lucky in the fact that they get to learn from the lessons of the past and the mistakes of what's been made. So, you know, all these things that are set for them are so valuable. And I don't think they really understand that it's, they are, you know, in some ways breaking new ground and being, you know, the custodians of their sport. But equally, they've got these great mentors who've experienced a whole lot of it. And I think that, I suppose, people can get really critical about it sometimes, about the whole system, and that it leads them down a path that they don't want to be on. But I sit there and applaud it sometimes and just say, look, for these people who are working in different industries and taking on roles in, particularly in business, in wellbeing or HR or safety, all those things come from the past, and lessons learned from the past, and lessons learned from mistakes. You know, I have a dear friend who was working in construction. He had only done a really brief induction on a building site, and unfortunately for him, when he went to that building site, he got electrocuted because he was holding a scaffold beam, and it hit some wires. And, you know, the shock, yes, he died on site. His foot, basically the charge went straight through him and blew his feet out. So he lost some of his toes. They revived him. He survived. So he's now in a situation where, yes, he's carrying these scars, and yes, he's carrying all these traumas and stuff. But, you know, I look at that business and I think, geez, if you had only helped him at the very beginning and given him the tools to be safer, or to understand, you know, being more engaging about your training. And to me, that's, you know, it's no one's particular fault, but they're just following the steps of the past. If they only evolve,
yes,
and train a little bit better and engage and get people who've been on site, like how we do ours, you know, someone with a lived experience. I've done this. This is how I do it, but this may not be for you. So let's work out what's best for you and go from there.
Why do you think, like, because I ponder this often in different ways, like whether it's like family systems or workplace, traditional models of what they call leadership versus actual leadership, and doing business and all of those things. And I've thought about it because sometimes it feels like you're sort of crawling out on a limb because you're doing things a little bit differently, and it feels so different. You're like, surely, but then if you also reflect, it's like, surely this has to be it because this is the only way that the change happens. But like, what do you think is I had the question before, but like, what do you think is the way, or how these things change and evolve in business or in leadership, or how we evolve as people? Like, what do you think stops people from
going from sort of reaching their full potential or becoming a leader within the group? I suppose it's about being the empowerment of the people above them. You know, and if you think of it like that, if there's someone above me that's looking down on me, it kind of suffocates your ability to grow. So, you know, we, particularly in my family's business, when we're running the parks, my wife and I we lived in Darwin for 18 months. and worked in a caravan park, there was so many different staff from so many different backgrounds, and there was backpackers and there was all these type of things, but we would be there working with them in the trenches. Right. So we're not in the office sitting there saying, do. We're out there. Okay, let's go. And, you know, as funny as it may seem, I love working in the hospitality part of the business, where I was the face sort of outside hanging out with all the guests. And I would say to my staff, okay, so what's wrong with this picture? And they look at me and they're, oh, no idea. And I'm like, okay, so there's a whole heap of tables out there. The chairs aren't straight. The tables aren't. And I said, I want those tables to say, sit at me.
Yeah.
Hello, welcome. So that means you've got to get over there and get the tables all lined up and get the chairs all pushed in, because when you walk into a restaurant and you see a table with the chairs all sort of out a bit, you go, oh, is someone sitting there? Is that getting used, or is that being cleaned?
Yeah.
Right. So those really little things. And, you know, my wife and I, we would start when the business opened, and we get there before that, so that we do a tour of the park, make sure everything's okay, talk to the customers, have a wave, and the staff would see us doing it. Right. So then the office would shut, we'd walk out into the bistro and we'd start serving food. And I'm in the kitchen washing plates, and I'm picking up plates, and I'm doing all the stuff. So that form of leadership, I think, is where, you know, best practice comes from, where people see the leader doing it, and, you know, they see them engaging, they see them out there in the trenches with them, working hard, sweating, you know, getting dirty. That to me is the ultimate form of leadership. Yeah. Yeah. Not as I say, do as I do.
Yeah. It's leading by being, even.
Yeah.
I always use the example of, like, if you're in a schoolyard and everyone knows not to litter and to put your rubbish in the bin, but one kid starts just being like, oh, I'll just leave my rubbish here. The more that one kid does that, the more that others around them will just start doing it. And the more that it becomes normalized, and they're like, oh, I guess this is just what we do here. And someone new comes to the school and they're like, oh, they just litter here, I'll just leave my stuff there too. I guess it just gets taken care of. Like, I just always use that analogy because I can picture, I can almost remember the feeling of what that was like, where it's like, do I do that, or, you know, like, or am I an idiot for putting my rubbish in the bin?
No, look, and I used to say this to the team: the standard we walk past is the standard we accept.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. So, you know, and if that is, and I do it all the time, I'll have all my footy gear and my backpack on, I'll get out of the car and I'll walk from the car park to the change rooms. And as I'm going, I'll be picking up rubbish.
Yeah.
And the young junior players, and I'm talking under 14s, under 13s, they're watching one of the coaches walking around picking up rubbish. And I say, hey, boys, can you give me a hand? Yeah, no worries. And down they'd come and they'd do it. And I said, this is part of what we do.
Sweeping the sheds, isn't it?
Sweeping the sheds. Leaders sweep the sheds. And is that from Legacy, right? James Kerr. There's a great book about the All Blacks culture and their connectivity, about what the importance was of how leaders need to lead by example. So yeah, I think that's in everything in life. It's not, whether it's at home, whether it's in sport, and, you know, even our house, my wife and I, we keep a very clean ship and a tidy ship, and everything has its place. And, you know, there's some things that I'm really fastidious about, and there's some things that I'm not. And we know our places. So, you know, I'm not allowed to stack the dishwasher or hang the clothes out because I don't do it right.
Well, I mean, you do it right.
Yeah. But as you know, I have a great array of footwear. And
yeah, you do.
Matching hats, matching shorts, matching shoes. So, you know, my shoe pile isn't a pile. It is a stack of clear boxes which has each shoe in it. I like to have them in color order so that I know which ones. All my shirts are in color order so that I know which shirt is which. And to me, that's just peace. So if everything's uniform and it's there ready, and that's part of that preparation, right?
I was going to say, is that part of, like, taking care of your life, because it's clearing up your energy? I call them, like, things that just clear up my energy, that just feel peaceful or efficient for me, and then I feel peaceful. Like, I feel
correct.
Yes. Because, oh God, that mental energy otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, you know, I'll get to, so that translates from home our home life is like that. It translates to work. So I'm always first at work. Yep. When everyone arrives into the office, the music's on, the TV's going with YouTube songs, the air conditioning's on, I'm sitting at my desk, everything's neat and ready for me to go, and I'm working. And I usually call the morning is my 4 or 5 hours of power. I just plow in, get it done. Yeah. The same thing happens with sport. I prepare, I'm the night before, my clothes are all out. I've got them on the hangers. So, it's not unusual to see me going to work with facilitator outfit. Right? My work, I've got my work kit on. Then I have my what I'm going to wear to facilitate. Then I've got my football gear, and it's all hung up on coat hangers in my car. Yeah. I'll take a spare shirt just in case I spill some coffee. Yes, right. And so then, when I get to football, everything's there. I just pull it out, put it in. The boys all go, "Wow, the oval's got all cones everywhere. It's all set up." I said, "This is just how we roll. If we prepare properly, everything happens." Yeah. And it gives you a sense of peace and calm. It's like your own special warm-up routine. Well, you do that each week, it becomes second nature. Have you noticed, because not everyone's necessarily going to be like that, and that's okay. But have you noticed anyone in your area, in your parameter, wherever you are, kind of start to pick up some of those things just naturally, even without you being like, "Oh, you should do this"? Absolutely. Particularly my kids, they've absolutely soaked it up, and that is that role modeling behavior. That if whatever you're putting out there, that they will soak up like a sponge. The young footballers, they're probably a little bit tougher nut to crack. So they have learned behaviors. They only know what they know. Yeah. And whatever background they come from, they take that, they bring that here. And I'm not going to change that. It's their life. That's how they roll. Yeah. So I want to make it so, all right, okay, well, this is you. So I've got to make sure I adapt my coaching or my leadership to what best fits you. Yeah. Leadership. Yes. Yeah. Person first, person-centered approach to anything. Yeah. And, when we look at the holistic well-being of a person, we have, obviously the person's in the middle with their strengths and values. And then around it is their literacy of life. So you'll have cultural, religion, family, financial, career, all those different little pieces, and they all make that one person. So if we can help enhance those little areas, all of a sudden things start to align, and they go, "Oh, hang on, this does work." And they start to make changes that fit their strengths and values. Yeah. Yeah. I like that, because you used the word empowering before, and I think that's really important in this case, because it's not, like you said, what works for you, because that's how your brain works. That's what brings you peace. But it's giving people examples of what could help them, what could work for them, or what they could try on, but also leading them by empowering them with the literacy in all of those areas, the information, and the cognition, the understanding, and the example, which is what's helpful for them to sort of see it as possible as well. It's kind of for me, it's cooking, right? I can follow a recipe well, and I can cook okay, but I get it's a lot of extra brain energy to get the inspiration. I need it given to me. But if I see someone make something, then I'm like, "Oh yeah, I could do that." And then I'm able to, with the list of things, it's just a lot smoother of an energy process, rather than a completely new thing on as a recipe that I haven't seen the end result of yet. It's a whole, or seen the process of it yet. And that when you're talking about that my auntie is flooding to me. My auntie was the most amazing chef. So when they ran all their pubs and hotels, she and such an empathetic person, and just watching her do her work. And she would, I love the way that she would, she'd run her kitchen, and she'd always say to me, "Al, never come back to the kitchen empty-handed, mate. Always come back with a plate, always come back with something, and just taught me about what people want and how to, embrace your passion, experiment, be flamboyant with food. And another lady in my life that, my auntie and my pseudo auntie Molly, they both passed away from cancer, and really, really traumatic for me and hard, because they're such beautiful women and such a strong influence in my life. It actually gets me emotional just talking about them. But both beautiful cooks, and they cook food with love. And, Molly was just completely different to Denise. Denise liked everything uniform and in order and have its place, whereas Molly was chaotic, and she'd be slurping her wine as she's going along.
All the love in the world. Molly was just Denise's work.
Yeah, right. She was from the Seychelles Islands, so she was French Polynesian, and she'd always call me, and she was one of the only ladies ever in my life that was allowed to call me Ali. She's like, "Oh, my little Ali, how are you, my darling?" Yeah. And she would cook these amazing meals, but she'd have, because of her taste, she would have chilies in her handbag, like lollies, and Tabasco, and just super hot food. But if you had it, you had her this amazing meatloaf that she would cook. You'd think, meatloaf, how could that be good?
I'm sure
It was magnificent. It was so delicious. And she would pour all these spices and herbs and all this stuff, and everyone's going, "Oh my God, that's going to be so hot." But it wasn't. It was flavoursome.
Yeah.
And it was just, no recipe. It's like a pinch of that, throw that in there, slurp.
It's an art, not a science.
Yeah. Have a slurp of wine. She'd get a bit sloshed and she'd be all jovial, and there'd be a bit more salt going in. But it worked. I suppose it's interesting. You see, there's two different people, the same exact result, the same beautiful meal presented to you on a beautiful plate at a table with friends, yet completely prepared in different ways.
Yeah, it sounds like it's like the lesson there is whatever works for you and whatever lets you light up and shine and enjoy the process is what's going to create something magnificent and beautiful. And
and that works for, right, if you look at that in a way for businesses or any type of situation, if someone just embraced and sat there and listened to the person or their team member and worked out, hang on, how am I going to get the best performance out of this person?
Yes.
let them have have a bit of free rein, and as horse riders will say, let the horse have its head.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, wow, this thing materializes, and that person then again goes, oh wow, they listened. I'm valued here. I can do it my way.
How good is that too? Like, everyone's happier. I am, very anecdotally, not specifically scientifically, but I imagine what I know about some of the research out there is that would decrease incidences of like workplace depression or workplace related depression.
Yeah.
Anxiety and things that impact how we feel. And
so, and next year there's a whole big focus that will come into workplaces, and people, I don't know if they're fully aware of the psychosocial wellbeing legislation that's coming out, and that people are going to have assessments done of their workplaces for psychological and social hazards. They don't look at them. They don't look at them enough. They don't examine them enough. It is, there's so many hazards out there that we just don't think of. Okay, there's a trip hazard. We see that.
Yeah.
But what is the fatigue hazard of this person doing night shifts? What is the psychological impact of this person dealing with, you might be working in an aged care facility dealing with people with dementia, and then you throw COVID on it, and you've got this blazing fire of these poor people who don't know how to look after themselves, and then throw on an epidemic, and then they've got to work in it. So there's some big hazards there.
Wow. I think it's going to be a bit of a reckoning, but I think it's going to be very necessary, and hopefully helps people kind of step through it rather than be blocked by it as well.
And that's what we want to do, like with LIVIN. We want to be able to help people have those conversations. They don't have to be conversations about, you know, I'm not doing well mentally. They can be hazards about, hang on, I'm seeing this in the workplace and I'm struggling with the concept. Can I get some help with it, please?
Yeah.
So, you know, us going into workplaces to talk to people about mental health education is more about empowering them to have that voice, to be able to speak up, to be able to talk to their team, to see if someone's struggling. You know, they drag their feet. They all of a sudden they start turning up late day after day after day. And it's like, hang on, this isn't normal. What's wrong, mate?
Yeah,
Well, I'm just not enjoying my job because I'm sick of listening to that freaking radio all day that's just beside my desk. It's like, well, man, it doesn't have to be on. Oh, great. Thank God. You know, just little things like that. They make so much difference.
It could be like overstimulation, you know,
Yeah.
anything that would impact someone's experience, even the environment, like it all matters. So
absolutely. I think Casey worked it out very quickly. LIVIN, the CEO at LIVIN, when I rocked up, it was like, just Al's the wind-up toy. Just let him go. Let him do his thing. He'll get the job done. I'm not going to put any pressure on him.
Right.
And, you know, I'm not, if you looked at it from a perspective of someone who can engage a group of 13 or 14-year-olds, you know, it's year 7, 8, and 9 at Southport High. You know, there was 1,500 kids in the session, and they throw in the 48-year-old male. And the kids love me. It's just something, it's just the engagement part that I just go, right, I just put on the different mask for this crew. And then when I go into a workplace, well, I know, okay, I've got a whole heap of construction workers here. I know how to appeal to them. I'll say, right, well, this is one of my experiences from life working in construction.
Yeah. Well, it's a little bit like a yoga teacher going into like army base and talking to soldiers. Yeah. I'm like, okay, correct. It's fine. You change your language because like it's all authentic, but it's a different hat in a way. It's like, okay,
it is.
What do they need to hear? That's still the truth. How they need to hear it. And I think if more leaders did that for their people, it would change a lot of things for the good.
When you said that about the hat, it reminded me of a keynote that my mum gave. And my mum is not a public speaker. Okay. She was invited by a group of people who run management rights on the Gold Coast. And because we come from a farm and we'd taken on this management rights, we had a couple of businesses and we're going very successfully. They asked her to do a speech about what the difference was in the change. Wow. And she walked on stage with a suitcase. And everyone said, well, hang on. And she said, now you might be thinking, what's this suitcase about? Well, this suitcase represents us leaving home, us leaving Victoria with a car and a horse float full of boxes because we couldn't find another thing that could fit all the boxes in it. What? And then she said, but in this case, and she opens the case up, she says, here's all the hats I wear as a manager, and puts on the I think she had a captain's hat for the ship. Right. She said, sometimes I have to steer the ship and be the captain and be up front and, you know, go to the dinner tables and all the stuff. Sometimes, and she puts on a gardening hat, I'm out in the garden and I'm doing my gardening. Or I'm out in the front and I'm doing some sport. And she said, I might be taking some activities. And she just kept putting different hats on. And I just looked at it and I said, it's so true. Every task we do has a different hat or a different mask.
Wow. She seems like a great role model to kind of be led by in ways that maybe she didn't even realize herself.
Yeah, I don't think she realizes it either. I certainly don't. There's certain things that sons and mums don't necessarily agree on. But yeah, look, there's, and particularly my stepfather, he's an amazing man, very quiet, very humble, but when he spoke, you listened. And you always knew something very valuable was going to come out of there. So there was a real yin and yang with him and mum. And it was a combination of the both of them that I learned a lot from. And my older brothers, of course, that was probably more of baptism of fire than anything else. Yeah.
Wow. Well, 2 questions before we wrap up for you.
Okay.
One is, where do you feel like you have room for improvement? So we're not negging, but just, you know, just where would you like to have room for improvement in yourself for like your own leadership or how you lead yourself or others?
I think from my point of view, I probably like to have a greater eye for detail in the way that I tend to rush. So I'll be balls in, go hard, bang, get it all done, punch it out. Oh, bugger, I didn't check that.
Yeah.
Right. And there'll be spelling errors, there'll be different things, and there'll be things that I've missed. And I was like, oh, I should have said that.
Yeah.
So the ability to ask not only myself to stop and read and go back and review, but also get someone else to review it.
Yep.
Right. The vulnerability of going, I want someone to check this before I send it.
Yeah.
Right. That's one thing that I really need to work on. But you know, it's empowering others. Then they also get the feeling of, hey, look, I'm valued. He wants my opinion.
Exactly. So there's a benefit to it anyway. That's
correct.
Awesome. And where do you feel like you get it really well done already? Like
on the stage. Yeah. When I'm up in front, it's that is my thing. That's what fills my cup when I get up on stage. And you know, people will go, oh, what do you find the toughest? I don't find any room tough. It's I can get a bit nervous sometimes, but I think nerves are good. That's the excitement, that's the adrenaline, it's the endorphins all pumping through you, getting you ready to go.
And they also tell you that you care as well. Like, you know, like, oh yeah, I care about this. Okay, that's okay to care about something. And
yeah, of course. Yeah. But you know, I go back to one presentation that I did, and it's probably one of my most memorable, was when my father-in-law, he had passed away the morning of that presentation. And the presentation was to his peers in his business. And they even said to me at the time, Al, you don't have to do this. We know what's, you know, and everyone was in mourning. Everyone was really sad. And I just turned around and said, if I don't do it, Ray would kick my ass. So I got up there and I did it, and it was so draining. It was probably the most emotionally draining session I'd ever delivered. I came out, and there was one of my friends from the caravan industry embraced me, and he just said, mate, do you need a hug? I said, oh, hell yeah, I do. So now I just call him Cuddles. But we all need that. So that, you know, for me, I suppose, being up and being able to share my story and empower others is something that fills my cup, makes me feel good, makes me feel valued, makes me enjoy the process of being able to educate and help others. But yeah, I think I do. That's the one thing I think I do okay.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you.
I agree also. So
yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate the time to get to sit and have a chat. I enjoyed it so much.
It's great.
Thanks for sharing more of your story with us, and for helping us all lead by example a little bit more as well.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope everyone can take a little piece out of it and think, hey, I can do that a bit better, or I can change that way and ask the people around me what works for them. And because we don't all have the answers all the time.
Yeah. Exactly. No, there's definitely lots of nuggets of wisdom in this one. So
all good.